Kia ora koutou katoa. The leaders of the two main parties have faced off tonight in the One News Leaders debate. We'll get an assessment of the performances by Labour's Chris Hipkins and National's Christopher Luxon in a moment from former United Future leader Peter Dunne. But first, some key moments from that debate.
We've built our tax plan independently of the fiscal plan. We've made it self-funding by generating savings from within wasteful government spending, and at the same time we've raised new sources of revenue. And the combination of all of that means that we're able to give relief to low and middle income workers.
National's tax cuts would make inflation worse, and they want to cut all of the targeted supports that we're putting in place to support Kiwis with the cost of living. Things like free early childhood education for 2-year-olds, taking away the prescription co-payment. These are things that the National Party wants to take away. Discounted public transport for young New Zealanders. They want to take those things away to pay for tax cuts that for many New Zealanders won't actually give them $150 a week. More houses. We need to build our way out of the housing crisis that we've got at the moment. We're currently building around 40,000 houses a year. The private sector is currently building around 40,000 houses a year. And we've built 12,000, or 13,000 I should say, new state houses and public house rentals. We've got to keep up the momentum in that area, building our way out of the housing crisis.
Labor's been an abject failure on housing, whether it's ownership, whether it's rental, whether it's state houses, right? There's been a lack of supply in all those three sectors and they're all connected together. What we have to do is we have to increase supply and build more houses.
So you agree on that?
We agree on that. The way we go about delivering that end will be different.
I know Christopher and National have signed up to the 2050 targets, and yet they want to cut all of the things that the government's currently doing to reduce our emissions.
What's your response to that?
Well, our response is that we're committed to the goals. We're just not committed to the way of delivering those goals that this government is. We're going to do it differently.
Christopher and the National Party, for example, want to kick out decisions around agricultural emissions till the next decade. I don't think we can afford to wait that long. It's not only bad for the environment, it's actually bad for our economy.
Are you taking it seriously enough?
Absolutely, I'm taking it seriously. But here's the dilemma, right? Our farmers actually feed 40 million people around the world. We're amongst the most carbon efficient in the world already. When you actually do what Chris is doing, which is to knock off 20 to 25% of them in a short period of time, all that happens
That's simply not true.
All that happens is that production goes off overseas to a less efficient country.
Here now to analyse both Chris's performances is Peter Dunne. Peter, tēnā, thank you for joining us.
Kia ora.
Hey, your overall thoughts on both leaders' performance tonight. Was there a clear winner?
Well, I think this was a very close debate. I think Christopher Hipkins had to win it decisively, given the expectations around him and his situation at the moment. He didn't do that. I think, if anything, it was a narrow points win to Christopher Luxon. Both leaders had their moments, but I think on balance, Luxon was better able to get his points out in a coherent and focused way. So that now puts a lot of pressure on Christopher Hipkins, both for the next couple of debates, but also for the remainder of the campaign.
Is Christopher Luxon ready to lead the country?
Well, I think that was the question on a lot of people's minds before tonight. To some, he will have answered that because he had clear and decisive answers. Whether you agreed with what he was saying is immaterial at this point, but he looked as though he was in control of his brief. He looked as though he knew what he was doing. Christopher Hipkins, on the other hand, at times looked like he was the leader of the opposition. It was really quite funny. I thought Luxon looked more prime ministerial and Hipkins looked like the leader of the opposition, just given the tone that they were both adopting. So it was pretty close overall. But as I say, I think probably the fact that Hipkins didn't deliver the knockout blow means that it's a narrow points win to Luxon.
Hipkins has had less than a year as Prime Minister, as the leader of the Labour Party. Will the issues we face now as a country get better if he's given a full 3-year term?
Well, that's what he's bargaining on. Of course, the counter to the charge that he's only had 9 months, as he himself said, is his government's been in power for 6 years, and why haven't they done these things? Now, that's a debating point, but it was tossed around a fair bit tonight. But I think what Hipkins is bargaining on is that he's a fresh face that can lead the country to a better direction if he gets a full term in his own right. Luxon, on the other hand, is saying, well, look, you've had 6 years, you haven't achieved progress so far, why should we trust you again? And he had a pretty compelling narrative in that respect. He was better able to get his points out in an organised way. Hipkins was a little bit more, not so much disorganised, but a wee bit more rambly. And I think that this was, a bit of a rusty first outing for him. I think he might be better in the next debate.
Fortunately, there are 2 more chances ahead. Thank you very much for your time and for your insight. That is former United Future leader and retired politician Peter Dunne. Tēnā koe.